Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round number 5 for group number 3, coming to you tonight from Road Atlanta. My name is Maunz. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the virtual production hall we have Joshua Wilkie. As we head to the longtime home of the SCCA runoffs for the return of the Formula Vs and Spec Racer Fords, we have got a good race in front of us. It all starts with the Formula Vs, and hey, considering the last time we had a Formula V broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, the finish of that race ended up being posted on the iRacing social pages. So I have a feeling that we are in for a really good race to kick off tonight's racing action, Charles.
Yeah, there was a pretty wild ending to that race. If you didn't see it, go check that out off of SMB's YouTube channel. It's fantastic. Four wide at the finish line, and oh, you know what? We could do that here tonight. I don't know if 4 wide is going to be possible with it being Road Atlanta, but we can hope that we can get 2 or 3 there across the start finish line. Maybe all pointed the proper direction. We'll see. It's such a fantastic track. It's, we've been here so many times before. Seen some fantastic races here, both on the night, the weekly race as well as the weekend warriors, where we had a 7-car pack coming in through the turn 10 chicane, and 7 cars go in, 1 car comes out. So it is very possible that we can see something very similar tonight. But let's hope for a great race. Got a nice 20-car so grid, so should be a fun race. And Road Atlanta it's just fantastic racing. It doesn't matter what car you bring here. It could be the Formula V's or it could be the IMSA GTP cars, and you're going to get some really good racing.
Yeah, Road Atlanta, an absolutely iconic racetrack. Opened back in 1970. It took only 6 months to build this track, and from 1970 all the way up until today, it is an iconic American road course. And as these drivers hit the racetrack for this qualifying session, looking to have a good run here today. And I will say, talking about the combination of Formula Vs running around this racetrack and the Spec Racer Fords later on, I'm going to share this Formula V story first. I put together a small little video for myself about a year ago at this point, comparing how I was in my first ever broadcast back on March 3rd of 2023 to how I was on a Ray Esports broadcast at this very racetrack about a year ago at this point. In fact, I believe it will be a year tomorrow. Since that broadcast. I remember the Formula V's put on a really good finish there, and hoping to have the same here tonight. Let's do a quick little onboard lap following Miles Crab heading his way down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1. Turn 1 around this track, one of the fastest corners. Got to go through here with full commitment, hit that inside curve, and carry the momentum as you go back up the hill and crest it, heading down into turns number 2, 3, and 4. This S section super tricky to try and nail down, but it's also a really rewarding part of the racetrack if you can get it right as well. Now down the hill, back up the hill again through the S's. It is a really tough section of racetrack. I remember for the TCRs for Group 1 here from the Ray Esports Club Series a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I think it may have been a month ago at this point. Had some drama heading through there. Certainly not ideal for those drivers to have that befall them here today. This is the bottom end of the circuit, turns number 6. That quick 90-degree right-hander into another 90-degree right-hander of turn number 7. One of the most important corners on this racetrack. It may not seem like much, but it spits these drivers out onto this 0.829 mile or 1.3 kilometer back straightaway. This back straightaway, without that turn 10 chicane, which was one of the latest alterations to this racetrack. Back in the day, the Whittington brothers, I believe it was, when they owned this racetrack, they used to land some planes there to bring in some not so broadcaster-friendly substances into this country. But here is a real good overtaking opportunity, which is probably going to be used at the end of this race. At turn number 10 chicane. It was the last addition onto this track and the last big change, although we back in 1998, which interestingly enough was the year of the first ever running of the Petit Le Mans. Now heading back down the hill into turn number 12. This flat-out blast to that start-finish line probably going to give us a real exciting finish, and that completes a lap of this absolutely brilliant racetrack that is Road Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely great call on that lap, and you're absolutely right as we're still on board with Miles Crab. This section we're coming up to here, turn 2 and 3, and now we're on board with Scott Russell. You have to be committed, just like you're in one. You got to try and carry that momentum. Through there, it's really easy because it's a blind crest. It's really easy to cut the inside of that chicane and cost yourself potentially an off track or time, depending on how deep you cut it. And it's also very, very dangerous because you're basically bouncing yourself over the curbs. So you have to be very careful. Obviously, turn 5 is critical, as well as turn 7. Turn 5 takes you on that little short straight. It's just very, very dangerous the way you have to lap through there. Turn 7, as you mentioned, got to keep that momentum up. Coming through 7, the curbs are a little tricky, but should you be able to keep the car headed in a straight line, you get down and you get some good run on this backstretch. As you mentioned, the Whittington brothers and their not strictly legal import-export business that they were conducting here. And we're coming down into the turn 10 chicane. Once again, it seems like more often than not, we get people who want to cut over from the left to the right and try and cut the second half of that chicane off. That generally ends up where we end up with issues between cars. So let's hope that everybody keeps their straight lines and the curved ones as well. And we'll settle in here as we're finishing up about halfway through qualifying, and going to have us a good race. The Formula V's put on a good show every time, and these guys, we talk about them week in and week out, how we've got a lot of professional SCCA racers out here that are running. And so they're very familiar with the V's, either having driven them in real life or driven against them in other classes like the Spec racers, which we'll see later. But these are very dedicated people to their crafts. So it's always fun to kind of watch them out on the track. They do some great battling.
Yeah, really awesome to see the participation that we've got in this series. We've got some drivers that we just see week in and week out in the Ray Esports / Weekend Warriors world. You've got some other drivers that you see in real life SCCA competition as well. Miles Scribe is one of them. He's your current provisional pole sitter as it stands currently, as a 1 minute and 44.084 lap time. That's pretty good for him. Only finds himself 100th of a second in front of your current provisional front row joiner of Andrew Love, slotted in P3 as it stands at the moment. And actually, no, you can make that down to 4th. It was Justin Huffman in 3rd, but his son Jameson jumping up to the provisional pole right off the back of an appearance on the Racing Line podcast, which you can catch on the Ray Esports YouTube channel every single Tuesday night. He jumps up to the provisional pole to 143.805. Charles, we have some experience commentating races with Jameson. He's a quick kid. He is a very fast driver, and certainly proving that in this qualifying session.
Yeah, he really is. He's always up near the top. And just like we were talking about with that Formula V race at Summit Point that was held over last weekend, it was basically him and his dad kind of running point on that race. They were both leading at one point in time before Dad kind of fell off a little bit. Jameson up near the front, just week in and week out, and he is just incredibly quick in these cars. And he was talking about his dad basically drove Formula V's for 15 years in real life. So this runs in the family, and obviously the sim version of it does as well.
And always nice to see a father-son duo joining us on the racetrack from this series as we continue to ride on board with him heading down that back straightaway. It's going to be a draft fest for sure come time for the end of this race. And in these Formula Vs, it's a rather long ride, but a fun ride as well. Always fun to go fast in some race cars. In fact, I'm sure the drivers heading down that back straightaway going to go weed heading down there. So that's going to be a good point of pride for some of these drivers to try and carry the most mass speed they can heading off into turn number 10. Still Jameson Huffman on the pole. Justin Huffman slot into 4th, and as I just typed down the YouTube chat talking to Tam, nice to see you in the chat as usual, Tam. It's hard for us in the commentary booth seeing Jay Huffman and Jay Huffman for that Formula V broadcast the other day when those two were going side by side. It's now Huffman and Huffman side by side heading down into turn number 1. It was just, oh boy, my brain was working at about 15 miles an hour, at 15 million miles an hour. Usually it works at 15 miles an hour, which is usually why I don't know where my keys are. But that was sketchy, trying to figure out where those two were. And I have a feeling we're going to have a case of deja vu with that again, considering how close they are in this qualifying session.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we may see another Huffman v. Huffman battle here during the course of this race, which will just make things a little more interesting. Then it's then it's just a matter of family pride, who's getting bragging rights this week, as they're going to do battle, and of course they'll keep it clean. I don't think they're going to end up wrecking each other. I could be wrong. We could see that, but I doubt it very seriously. These races are usually extremely clean because like I said, these racers race each other, week in, week out, at least once a week. If they're around, they get a chance to race, they're going to race. And the esports community is extremely friendly and very sociable, and they battle hard, they battle clean.
And these drivers hoping to give us a clean and exciting day of racing action, at least for the Formula Viso Spec Racer. Ford's put on some pretty good shows as well. And harkening our minds back to the last round of this championship, right at the start of the month on February the 5th at Willow Springs, it was Michelle Lynn able to grab the win when everything was said and done in the Formula V's in a rather dramatic finish. I was unfortunately out of commission at that point. I sound like a rusty gate creaking in the wind after having a pretty bad bout of illness around that period of time, but I was tuning into that broadcast and harassing you guys in the commentary booth as all that was going on. But Michelle, off the back of that win, her first ever Ray Esports win, finds herself in 13th as it stands at the moment. Fingers crossed that from starting in P13 she won't get struck by any falling anvils tonight. I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I've jinxed that woman enough.
Yeah, you know what? We need to get rid of those anvils. They just seem like they creep up at least once during the course of the race, and we just need to be anvil free here for a night. How about that?
Yeah, getting rid of the anvils, that Acme subscription getting cut off. I swear, that Acme subscription, it's like trying to cut a gym membership. It is impossible to do. So that's the trouble that I've been finding thus far in my broadcasting career. Hopefully now that I've been doing this stuff for, as of Monday, it'll be 2 years.
Like trying to cancel a timeshare.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I'm not sure if there's any ads that you see on cable news programs that are like lawyers who don't really practice law anymore and got their bar license revoked or something like that. Advertising that they can get you have an Acme subscription for falling anvils. But either way, I think that's a pretty accurate description there. Thank you very much, Charles. As we see this qualifying session being brought to a close, a minute and a half left to go. Looks like Jameson Huffman going to grab the pole and doing so in rather stunning fashion as well. That's about a 0.2 of a second gap, over 0.2 of a second between himself and Miles Crabb. If you gotta get it done, you gotta get it done with authority. And in these Formula V's, a 0.2 of a second gap is like a vast yawning chasm.
It really is. It's several car lengths if you just sit there and kind of do the math on it. We see Chuck Labano. I think he is the last car on track. So unless he comes out with a blistering lap, don't think he's going to take pole. But he's still sitting there in 12th with a 144.7. So good starting position, kind of mid-pack, but there'll be some battles there. He's going to be around the aforementioned Michelle Lynn, Trip Isley behind her, Jim Brewster and Josh Justice up in front. So that's going to be a nice little hornet's nest that he's going to have to work around.
And with these Bumblebee sounding race cars, those Hornets' nests going to be a rather pervasive factor in this race at Road Atlanta. Ooh, ignore that voice crack. Holy cow. Rather pervasive in this race at Road Atlanta. Second tries to charm. The broadcaster's voice cut out for me at the worst possible time. Don't want to sound like this whenever I'm on the air. That would not be ideal. I think I did a Ray Esports broadcast once where my voice gave out right as I was wrapping up the show. Charles, I think you're in the commentary booth with me during that one. And as soon as we wrapped up that broadcast, I was just doubled over in my chair, hacking up a lung. So hoping not to have a repeat of that here for this broadcast. That would not be ideal, and I don't think there'd be anything I could do to lose an audience quicker. But let's get this night of racing action underway by taking a look at the starting grid. And it's going to be Jameson Huffman, the driver of the number 89 car, starting this race from the pole. Miles Miles Crab going to join him on the front row. Andrew Love will start this race in third next to Ryan Campbell, the Frito Sport car, starting in fourth. Justin Huffman will start in fifth next to Seth Spolman in sixth. We have Scott Russell in seventh, Joseph Tarantino in P8, Matt Thompson for Frito Sports starting in ninth, and Jim Brewster, the admin of the Formula V Weekend Warrior Series, rounding out your top 10.
Yep, Josh Justice starts in 11th, Chuck Labano in 12th as we wrap to the second page. Michelle Lynn starts 13th, Trip Isley in 14th, Jacob Schilling in P15, Brad Cathcart in 16th, Edgar Sanchinelli, Frito Sport in 17th, Wayne Buttermore, 18th, Jason Grider in 19th, Corey Heffron rounds out your top 20. Final four, Dan Stasinski in 21st, Joaquin Effinger in 22nd, Mike Key in 23rd, and Ken Estep rounds out your 24-car grid.
24 cars set to grab the green flag in a couple of moments. Simon, while we still have the time, I think I should maybe give a little bit of history about this track. And I'm definitely not just doing this because I prepared some track information graphics for Road Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I want to break those bad boys out. You won't be able to see them on the stream, but I will be able to see them here from my perspective in the broadcast booth. And let me tell you, this track is storied. I mentioned during that track guide earlier on the fact that the last big alteration to this track was that turn 10 chicane at the end of the back straightaway back in 1998, and fittingly that was the first time that the Petit Le Mans was run here back in 1998. Has been a staple of American sports car racing ever since, of course, that 2015 race where the GTLM Porsche of Nick Tandy ended up taking the checkered flag in a shortened running of that event. But as I mentioned in my open as well, Road Atlanta rather synonymous with people in lower level sports car racing in the form of the SCCA. That's a little bit harsh. I've been a member of the SCCA coming up to nearly 11, actually coming up to 12 years now. Holy cow. And the SCCA runoffs were held here from 1970 upon this track's opening all the way up until 1993. It's shuffled around ever since. It's now seemingly at a different track with a rather similar name, Road America, up there in Wisconsin, held it this past year. It's going to hold it this upcoming year, and apparently it's also going to hold it in 2026, which I will say, so a little bit of controversy surrounding that. But I mean, hey, it's Wisconsin. Maybe it's just me no longer having to think about a race car driver's diet, but I'd be very happy going up to Wisconsin and being a part of the festivities up there just so I can enjoy that wonderful amount of cheese that they have up there in Cheeseland. But before I get on talking about me gorging myself with food, let's get ready for this fifth round of this Group 3 season. That Porsche pace car making the turns come down pit lane. The field now in the hands of our pole sitter of Jameson Huffman. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. And it's a very even kill start with both of our front row sitters. Miles Crab looking to try and get that move done to slip his way up into the race lead, heading down into turn number 1. Still side by side with those competitors. Huffman having that inside line, going to help him out a lot. Heading through there, and oh, that's upside down and tumbling. Coming out of turn number 1, barrel rolling. That, I believe, is Joseph Tarantino. Josh Justice getting a piece of that action as well, but Tarantino in the 973 car ending his race only one corner in.
Yeah, and we'll get a replay here, I'm sure, in just a moment. Seems like everybody else is back, and I think even Josh Justice is back rolling, was also involved in that incident. So he's just a little further back as we're working our way through turn 5. Seems like everybody's clear of that as well. So far, so good. Have one car already towed back to the pits of Joseph Tarantino. The rest of the car still navigating their way through turn 6 and 7.
And more contact being made, and upside down yet again, heading down into turn number 7. That right there is a huge hit for the number 73 car of Wayne Buttermore, going off the circuit in dramatic fashion. 2 flippers at the very start of this race. Buttermore ended up popping back onto his wheels, albeit he's missing an engine cover. That's going to be a lot of damage on that race car as we take a look and see some side-by-side racing involving Justin Huffman and Andrew Love heading down into turn number 10. Looks like Love going to hold on to P4 as it stands at the moment, as Miles Crab has jumped his way up into the race lead in front of Jameson Huffman, building up a gap as well between the P2 runner of Jameson Huffman and Ryan Campbell's. More drama heading down into the turn 10 chicane. That's Joaquin Effinger and Jason Grider.
Yeah, it was just a little loose coming through the first part of the chicane. loops the car around, and just really there's just nowhere to go when you're in the chicane. If you're just kind of a target at that point for every car that comes through. Some cars did a good job of getting around, were able to work their way around, but not all of them, unfortunately.
Oh, as we see some side-by-side racing involving Michelle Lynn and Scott Russell heading down into turn number 3. Michelle Lynn getting that move done to slip her way up into 6th in that number 44 car. She has been a woman on a mission thus far, already up 7 spots from where she started in this race. Not the hard charger, although she is tied for the honors of hard charger, as Mike Key in the 998 car, currently running in 16th, is also up 7 spots. I'm not sure what happened to my voice there a couple of moments ago. Probably the downside of having a whole bowl of chicken noodle soup before a broadcast, as we ride on board with Jacob Schilling in the number 85 car, getting a move put on him by Jim Brewster, heading through the bottom end of the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've seen a little more people into the pits. Justice, Buttermore, Grider have all pitted from their incidents that they had previously. Think that Effinger still out there on the track, a little further off the pace, but not horrible. There's still a couple of cars back there. The back end of the pack is kind of stretched out a bit, as we'll start seeing the race down the back straight, and with cars being passed from the draft as we're back on board for this opening start. It looks like 6 wide coming through there, which is crazy. Oh, yeah, just contact, and not really anything Justice could do about that. I couldn't quite see who that was that he made contact with. But yeah,
Tarantino.
The Tarantino. So I saw several other cars involved in there somewhere, and I think that, well, Tarantino was obviously the one that went flying. I don't think that's where the initial contact was, as I'm looking around again. I want to say the initial contact was the car kind of right to the in front, but to the right of him as they were coming through turn 1. But we're back on board now. Huffman back. Oh, we're going to get Tarantino's view of the incident here.
Oh, and this is going to make some viewers nauseous. Upside down. Oh, sky, ground, sky, ground, sky, ground, sky. That is a wild ride for Joseph Tarantino on the exit of turn number 1. Absolutely nothing he could have done. It looked like that number 99 car of Joshua Justice shot across the racetrack. Wow, that was a huge hit for both of those racers, as we're going to see the second moment of aerial acrobatics. That's Wayne Buttermore heading down into the corner. That's himself and Brad Cathcart in the 905 car. Skids on his roof, backs it into the tire barrier, and that somehow pops him back onto his wheels. Wayne Buttermore still on the lead lap as a result of all of that. I mean, granted, he probably doesn't have clean pants after that, but he's been able to. I'm not even sure if he's made that call to come into the pit, so Wayne Buttermore may be running the added ventilation, so clearly overheating motors not going to be a problem for him.
I can't confirm he has come into the pits. Looks like he took his fast repair and went back out on the track. So we were starting to see a little bit of a pattern here as we're on board with Michelle Lynn. Top 2 cars were up there about 2/10 apart. I think they're just basically, we're at the point now that they're drafting on the backstretch and swapping positions. My guess is that Campbell and Justin Huffman are doing the same. So we're watching on board here with Thompson, Lynn, and Love in very close contact with each other as they're coming through 4, and now almost 4 down into 5. And I saw a car spinning. I think that was Trip Isley in the background.
And Isley having a moment. Oh, don't tell me we've had another flipper. I think we may have had another flipper in the form of Trip Isley. We may need to take a look at a replay of that. We may need to keep a counter as well. The number 60 car, you can see him exiting turn number 1 right now, heading down into turn 2. Contact being made, spins off the track, hits the barrier in an odd way, and upside down for the 3rd time in this race. Oh boy.
Yeah, that that really wasn't Tripp's fault either. It was he just checked up for a car that moved over and kind of got hit in the rear, and then took a very bad trip, pun intended.
That's the only response I have to that. That was mildly cheesy. Let's take a look at some side-by-side. Yeah, don't have to tell me. Side-by-side racing going on with Andrew Luff, Michelle Lynn, and Matt Thompson. Those three drivers battling for the final spot in the top 5. But never mind that. Oh, contact being made upside down. Another flipper. Seth Bowman, the number 42 car, barreling his way down into turn number 10. I feel bad for laughing, but this is a fourth flip we've had in the span of 7 minutes. That car is toast. He's done for in that number 42 car. Brad Cathcart and the 905 car. The Aussie racing from the land down under, the only driver who hasn't gone upside down.
Yeah, we're going to hear this. It's Scott Russell. Oh, yeah, just in the back. Just took it, took a shot from behind and sent him into the barrier, upside down, broken right front suspension, has his toe back.
What in the world are we seeing right now? Okay. We had some pretty big shoes to fill in reference to that Formula V race that we had here on Slow Motion Broadcasting back on Saturday. So some pretty big shoes to fill. But to fill those shoes, I guess we've been packing in some Formula V race cars upside down. I mean, granted, these cars, I forget who said it, but I remember one time someone described the Formula V as being a shoehorn, which I'm not entirely sure is correct. But I'm at a loss for words. Side-by-side racing with Michelle Lynn and Andrew Love. This is an iRacing broadcast. We'll get back to talking about this instead of talking about the aerial acrobatics. This isn't the Summer Olympics. Here we go. Side-by-side hang down that back straightaway off into turn number 10. Michelle Lynn going to get that move done to slip her way up into 5th. Michelle Lynn, who I mentioned earlier on being the hard charger, she's not the hard charger at this point. She's 3rd in the hard chargers as Corey Heffron running down in 10th, up 10 spots thus far in the number 52. Well done to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, so good. I'm hoping we're not starting a jinx, commentator's curse for anybody, but as we're on board here with Dan Stasinski, working his way through the chicane, and it looks like the cars have started to kind of group up. So we've got the 2 front cars, Crabb and Huffman, the Jamison Huffman, that is. We've got Campbell and Justin Huffman in 3 and 4, about 3.5 seconds back. We've got a group of 3 cars, Love, Lynn, and Thompson, about 6 seconds back. Then we've got another group of about 3 cars, Jim Brewster, Corey Heffron, and Schilling, about 12.5 seconds back. Then we've got Labano, Santinelli, and Russell, about 15 seconds back. And then we've got another group of 2, it's actually 3, Stasinski, Key, and Cathcart is up there, and they're about 25 seconds back. So it seems like we're starting to get a little pack racing going here.
And as we're following Chuck Labano and having this wide camera shot where you can see a little bit of Jacob Schilling's race car, I'm going to do a little bit of Schilling based off what was said in the YouTube chat a couple of moments ago in reference to some of these cars being struck by Thor's hammer. Let's take a look at Tor Tullo's perspective of that Formula V race a couple of days ago here on SMB. Actually, take a look at the brand new upload, the first ever episode of the Driver's Eye Show, where we ride on board with some of the drivers that you see on the air. That was a real good race in the Formula Vs the other day, and you get to see the race winner's perspective from that 4-wide photo finish with the top 4 covered by less than a quarter of a tenth of a second and sideways heading through turn number 10. Edgar Santinelli with the drift in the number 57 car. I think his teammate may have taken the idea of a drift a little bit too far. Actually, no, that was Brad Cathcart spinning coming out of turn number 10 right in the back of shot. Thought that was one of the other Frito Sport cars. It was not. But here we go. Some side-by-side racing with Edgar Santinelli and Chuck Labano as they single file out, heading their way off into turn 1.
Just pretty straightforward racing thus far. You're seeing the draft work a little bit. It's allowing these cars to kind of swap positions amongst their little group. But so far, no real major issues for anybody in the past lap or 2. Just a little gap starting to open up between Crabb and Jamison Huffman. He's opened up to about 0.3, but now it's closing back down. So it was up almost to about a half second there. I think the draft on the backstretch is kind of keeping those cars together.
Oh, as you can see, Brad Cathcart having to deal with Mike Key very slow coming out of turn number 5. Turn 5 around this track, Charles, always the sketchiest point of this racetrack as far as I'm concerned, because you've got the gravel on the outside where if you hit that, you're kind of just going to skip across it and then end up nosing into the tire barrier, which is never ideal at all. As we see some side-by-side racing involving Matt Thompson, Michelle Lynn, that's a battle for 5th as it stands currently. But turn 5, that is a super hard corner, regardless of what kind of car you're running around this track in. Could be the Dallara IR01, could be a GT3 car, could be a Formula V, could even be a 410 wing dirt sprint car. Turn 5 always going to be tough.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost a one. I would say it's almost a one lane, kind of corner where you have to be pretty perfect on your entry line. Too much of the inside curb and kind of just unsettles the car, kicks you out wide. Too much, too wide on entry, and you have a hard time trying to recover it without getting off into the gravel, then the grass, then the wall. So you have to be very careful there. So it is a very tricky corner that to try and deal with.
Turn 5, super tough. I mean, this entire racetrack built up with some very challenging corners, but turn 5 to me, always one of the hardest, along with turn number 6 as well. May not seem like much, but that corner always catching me out, albeit very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead, behind the wheel. Side-by-side racing was going on a couple of moments ago involving Dan Szynski and Mike Key. Key, who I mentioned earlier on as being a hard charger, has kind of dropped down a little bit as of late, currently running still 7 spots gained from where he started in this race, running 16th as it stands currently. However, as some more drivers a little bit farther up the road gain a lot of spots, mainly in the form of Corey Heffron up 12. It's been a pretty good race for a lot of drivers up and down this grid, but these two who we see right now, despite the fact they're side-by-side, while they were side-by-side, single filing out, right as I mentioned that, they're the only drivers in this race who are still running in the same spot that they were since the drop of the green flag.
Yeah, it's just been a battle up at the front between those top two. They just seem like they switch positions every couple of laps. Once they get a good run down the backstretch, they can just kind of overlap, and I think that they're pretty knowledgeable about that. So now it's going to be, as we're at the 14-minute mark of the race, we start thinking about that late race strategy on where do I want to be, where do I want to be, and when do I want to make a move to take the lead, and how am I going to hold it once I get there.
And let's see how things shake out. Still with a decent chunk of this race left to go. Rapidly approaching on the halfway mark, though, and I will say, and this is honest, been quite a long time since we saw a flip. It feels like, I may have just jinxed it yet again. Still seeing these three tailing each other, heading through the S's into turn 5 right now. You also see a view of the other blimp over this racetrack right now. It is a wonderful ride in the world of racing, and very pretty looking track as well, despite some of the other RVs on the infield. I kind of prefer this view of the infield, though, because whenever I'm trying to remember now, it may have been one of the Ray Esports broadcasts back in early 2024. Charles, I think you were on the show with me, and I pointed out how there was a tent that was just levitating on the infield, defying the laws of physics. I remember taking a screenshot of that and just thinking, what in the hell? After that broadcast, can clearly tell that my mind goes in some odd spaces whenever I'm on the air, as we continue to see these side-by-side fights go on with those drivers just barely clinging on to the top 5 spots.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were on board here with Andrew Love, I think Michelle Lynn took a kind of an alternate line, just did not want the draft, just wanted to kind of hang back in the back of this group of 3. So she said, I'm not racing just yet. So she just said, I'll just get out of the draft for a bit and just take a little bit of a break and settle in for the last 14 minutes. So yeah, so far it's pretty straightforward. I think everybody now is just now that the chaos at the start kind of over with, we're just going to just kind of stay in line and see what we can do, except for the Corey Heffron, who's still up 10 positions, running in P10, and he's on the back of this group with Schilling and Brewster. So I think he's thinking he's got a couple more spots for sure he wants to try and grab before this race is over.
Still trying to make up some moves. These drivers, they can get a little bit greedy from time to time. I mean, based off my experience driving in real life. I can attest to that. Here's a good story from my karting days. One time I was running an autocross event in the parking lot of, I guess it's Dover International Speedway. I guess since the change of ownership, they had to rename it. But I was running an autocross event down in Dover, Delaware, in the really roughed up parking lot on the outside of the racetrack. And the way the course was lined up, the person at the starting line, who's this guy, Pete, very nice guy who used to run the junior kart program in the Philly region of the SCCA, he used to walk away from the starting line to peer over the truck, the timing truck, to be able to see if the course was clear. I'll hold off on that story in a couple of moments as Jacob Schilling and Jim Brewster going side by side, heading down that back straightaway into turn number 10. Perfect time for me to try and spin a yarn about my karting days. Looks like they're going to single file out, heading into the braking zone. So I will wrap up that story and say that whenever Pete used to walk away from that start line of that autocross event and look over by the truck, oh my God, these drivers are not going to give me any sort of time. Side by side with Ryan Campbell and Justin Huffman, they single file out. I would roll myself back in the cart to try and give myself a couple of inches. He walked up to me at the end of the event and said, "Hey, you're doing that to try and get an advantage in class." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm trying to do that so I could be the fastest thing at the event," which was actually true, which is really cocky of me to say because I was 11 at the time. But anyways, with that story squared away and taken care of, my father can attest to that as well. I cried after he yelled at me. Let's get back to the racing action and follow these drivers. Still giving us some good battles. Scott Russell, though, coming down the pits in the number 22 car. What is the deal with the driver from New Jersey? This is an odd call.
This is an odd call because I don't think we've seen him interacting with anybody on track. He's been around them, but I don't think he's been involved in anything, so I'm not really sure why he's in the pit. The steering wheel looked straight as he was coming in, and he is taking fuel, interestingly. Yep, I think he says, "I'm done." I think that might be it. He said, "You know what? I've had enough." I think maybe he's prepping for the Spec Racer race coming up next. He wants to get a head start, get a few laps in before that race kicks off.
Again, a bit more seat time for the Spec Racer Fords, which, despite being draft monsters in their own regard, are about as far apart and far removed from a Formula V car as you could possibly get, outside of the fact they both have four wheels. Following Jim Brewster in the number 993 car, currently running in 8th, I nearly said that he was in the 8th car running in 933rd. That would not be a good start to his race at all. I'm not even sure if that'd be physically possible. That would be bad. I mean, I think running 933rd in a race like this, around a racetrack like that, he would probably find himself racing probably in upstate New York. I think that's probably how things would shake out, which would not be good at all. I mean, upstate New York, very pretty, but for a race at Road Atlanta, if you find yourself driving around Watkins Glen, that's not very cash money.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's no, he's doing a good job. He's like I said, running at 8th. He's up a couple positions, so he's stay out of trouble. That seems to be the word of the day, is avoiding disaster at the start of the race. But for now, he's just kind of running his laps, and he's got a couple of cars that will the aggression level will crank up as the minutes click off. And so we'll see some side-by-sides between these three before it's all over with.
I may come back to regret me saying that running around Watkins Glen when you're trying to compete in a race at Road Atlanta is not very cash money. I'm not sure what sort of stuff they pump into my room whenever I'm on the air. It must be the hot air coming out of my mouth. It must mess with my judgment in terms of some of the stuff that I say on the air. This is coming from me, who's possibly the most boring 20-year-old on God's green earth. Looking at some not boring racing, though, involving Michelle Lynn in 5th, Andrew Love in 6th, and Matt Thompson occupying the 7th spot as it stands currently. These three have been just about inseparable ever since the drop of the green flag some 21-ish minutes ago. They've been giving us a good battle to talk about thus far in this race. Michelle Lynn, of course, off the back of that win at Willow Springs. And some more drivers involved in this battle that aren't any slouches either. Matt Thompson's been quick thus far in this Ray Esports Club Racing League season. And Andrew Love, of course, always a very quick driver in the Ray Esports / Weekend Warriors world. Nearly won a couple of Formula V Weekend Warriors races last season, along with this season as well. So he's quick. We got 3 very capable race car drivers occupying our screen time at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we talked about Michelle a couple of laps ago where she was in the back of this group. I think she decided she wanted to be in the front of this group for at least a couple of laps. And so we'll see if the guys are going to stay in line, if they're going to try and make a move, because obviously once you get that overspeed from the draft on the back stretch, it makes you want to make that pass just that much more, because you feel like that you're holding yourself up. We see a car up in the far background that took a very interesting line up through the chicane or outside of the chicane. So I'm not sure who that was, but either way, it was not cash money, as you just said earlier. The line took. So anyway, yeah. So far, Michelle doing so as you see, Thompson and Love have passed Michelle again. So they did not want to ride behind for very long. They've made their move around, and so that seems like that aggression level is starting to pick up now as we're about 7 minutes away from the final of this race.
What started off with the falling anvils and turn into meows has now transformed into that phrase. Oh boy, I've created some very bad things on the air. That may be one of them. Jacob Schilling, who are falling right now, is occupying the 8th running spot in front of Jim Brewster and Corey Heffron. Heffron still the hard charger as it stands currently, and has the opportunity and time to make up some more spots as well. Heffron, 10 positions gained, running in P10. That number 52 car really having a wild ride up to this point and still showing some rather good pace. In fact, last time by was quicker than both Jacob Schilling and Jim Brewster. So Corey Heffron maybe chomping at the bit to get a move done on Jim Brewster in the not too far off future to make sure that Jacob Schilling doesn't pull away from these drivers. It's been a good race up to this point, outside of the flipping chaos that we had at the very start. It settled into a groove, but right now I think we may have to start talking about these drivers at the front. Jameson Huffman and Miles Crabb been rather tame ever since the drop of the green flag. However, considering that checkered flag is coming up in less than 6 minutes time, I have a feeling they may start pushing it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think at this point it's about time to try and make your stand with whatever group you're running with, and say, okay, I'm going to take the lead here, and I'm not going to give it up. But you're going to have to pass me. I'm not just going to give it to you. You're going to have to work your way around, and I'm not going to make it easy on you. So we'll start seeing those battles become a little more intense, then a lot more intense very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be slightly tense, and then it's going to get all sorts of crazy. It's going to be so tense. In fact, come time for the end of this race, I feel like I'd probably want a massage when everything is said and done from it. It's going to be a wild one. I'll tell you what, that's many sketchy massage parlors that you see in some strip malls around this country. I'm just going to leave it at that. Looking at some stuff. Oh, boy, not touching that one. Side-by-side racing with Chuck Labano heading down into turn number 3. That is himself and Edgar Sentinelli racing hard a couple of moments ago. Not a lot of strings attached in terms of that battle. Just side-by-side racing heading through turns number 1 and 2, and they single file out on the exit of turn number 3. We've hit the point of this race where I feel like these drivers are just bracing themselves for the conclusion of it, trying to figure out where exactly to position yourself come time for the final laps of this race. Or as I say that, though, Miles Crabb and Jameson Huffman, they're side-by-side for the first time in a while right now. Trying to grab the lead is Miles Crabb, and I think he was able to get it done on Justin Huffman a couple of moments ago. Meanwhile, Andrew Love and Michelle Lynn and Matt Thompson all swap-a-rooing. This battle for 5th has been brewing ever since the drop of the green flag, and it looks like it's still going to be intense in the run-up to the line in this race. But Miles Crabb grabbing the lead from Jameson Huffman.
Yep, they've been doing this here and there as we're seeing them. They're now side-by-side going into 1, and it looks like Huffman's going to take that lead over. I did see a gap has opened between Justin Huffman and Ryan Campbell of about 2 seconds, they were battling for third. And I saw Campbell off the track to get the little notification that he had got off track, and apparently it was enough that it cost him a couple of seconds, and so that battle is probably over with. I don't know that Campbell is going to have the time to make up a 2-second gap before the end of the race.
I'm not sure if he's going to be able to close it up between now and the end, but still valiant effort if he gives it the old college try, as some would say. Seen some drivers do some very odd things in some of my time doing broadcasting. In fact, the last time that I was doing a broadcast of a race here at Road Atlanta, I believe it was for the iracing Make-A-Wish Drive for Wishes charity event, where we had some drivers come into the booth and sing. And I will say, and this is fresh coming from me, it's a good thing that they decided to make a career out of being sim racers instead of being singers, because I even made a joke during that broadcast that I was very happy that there wasn't a certain donation goal that would make the commentators sing. Oh, as you can see, sideways snap from Miles Crab hang down into turn number 10. In fact, I share an anecdote of practicing singing and cracking the mirror in my bathroom, but Jameson Huffman maybe going to try to take the run heading down the hill off into turn number 12. These two really starting to size up where they can test the waters and where they can get the moves done. We got 2 laps of racing action left to go. Got some lap traffic a little bit farther up the road in the form of Joaquin Effinger. I'm sure Effinger will try and get out of the way of these two as quickly and efficiently as he possibly can. But Crab and Huffman really starting to get racy.
Absolutely, and I loved what we just saw from Jameson Huffman. He took a very wide line going through the final corner and got a really good run, but then he lifted. So he's been testing some alternate lines in a couple of corners there, and I think he may be starting to formulate his strategy for the end of this race, and it may be a very wide over/under top entry into that final corner to kind of get underneath Crab at the end. So keep an eye out. I don't think he's going to make any moves between now and that final lap, which will probably be the next lap.
I believe we are coming to the white flag this time by, and for the drivers running P1 and P2, they've been familiar with this position ever since the drop of the green flag. No one has really been able to contend with them. I will note the fact that Jameson's father, Justin Huffman, occupying the final podium spot as it stands currently, and considering a 2-second gap between himself and Ryan Campbell in 4th. Don't think we're going to have a battle to talk about there at the front of this field, though. Miles Crab leading them heading through the turn number 10 chicane for the second to last time. Will he be able to lead them coming out of it for the last time is the real question. I think that back straightaway, that is going to be the time to pounce if you are Jameson Huffman. And for Miles Crab, you're going to have to drive the widest Spec Racer Ford car seen on this side of the equator to try and hold on to it. Some side-by-side racing going on involving Brewster, Schilling, and Heffron. That's hanging down into the corner. Corey Heffron, he's been the hard charger thus far, but has not been able to charge up any farther than where he finds himself right now, but he still has one more lap left to go. At the front of the field, though, Miles Crab and Justin Huffman covered. Jameson Huffman, my apologies. Justin's running in 3rd. His son Jameson running in P2. Not a lot between these two drivers. It's only 0.3 of a second heading their way into turn number 5 for the last time in this race. Huffman in the 89 car. Crab, who's been very fast thus far this season, but hasn't really gotten the wins that you'd expect. Nothing bad against him. It's just been other people have been able to pip him right at the line. I wouldn't say that it's a position that Miles Crab has found himself in the past, but he's hoping to try and prevent what's happened to him before and try and hold on to the lead with only a couple of corners left to go. Miles Crab leading them coming out of turn number 7 onto this back straightaway. Let's see that gap close up, closing, heading down this back straightaway. Huffman maybe gonna try and get that move done, closing up and try to pull out to the inside line, heading down into the turn 10 chicane in these slow Formula Vs. It'll be another 15 seconds before they hit the brakes off into turn number 10, slamming and dropping the anchors right now, and Huffman pulling ahead before they hit the apex into the turn 10 chicane. Miles Crab enjoying that enjoying the draft now, coming out of the final corner. Let's see if it's enough. Coming right to the line, trying to get the move done around the outside. Huffman trying to defend side by side right to the line, but it's not going to be enough. Jamison Huffman going to win this race. Let's head to the second between these two, but here we go between these three wide right to the line. Andrew Love trying to get some moves done. Michelle Lynn going to be classed in 5th. Matt Thompson classed in 6th, and Andrew Love right close to them as well. Some more battling right to the line. This may be the 3-wide fight that we are looking for. Here we go. Heffron trying to get the move done. Will he be able to slip his way up into 8th? It's a photo finish right at the line, and it's going to be Jacob Schilling holding on to P8.
Woo! It's a great finish. Less than a tenth of a second between Huffman and Crab. At the very end, Huffman did a good job of just finding a good defensive line in that final quarter. Didn't really give Miles a chance to work around, and just tight battles all up and down, as you see. Just you get Mike Key finishing now to finish P14, but you had anywhere from 0.2 of a second to 0.02 of a second in the top 10. It's just been some fantastic racing tonight in the Formula V's.
Yeah, a brilliant race, and let's see this brilliant battling. They were 3 wide heading under the bridge coming out of turn 10. Look at that, Michelle Lynn breaking the elbows out in the 44 car. Gets a move done to slip her way up into 5th right at the line. Matt Thompson slipping down to 6th, and Andrew Love will be classed in 7th as a result of all this. But look at that, Lynn slipping through, running off into the dirt as well. I think there was a little bit of contact, either that or it was super close, heading down the hill through turn number 11 into 12 at the end of this race. Michelle, though, well done at the end of that race to give us a good battle to talk about. And Justin Huffman and Jameson Huffman and Miles Crabbe, see, I confused the two myself. They gave us a good battle to talk about as well. And I think we got some of them waiting in the interview waiting area. We'll briefly take a quick look at the results before we head off to that Spec race or Ford race coming up in the not too far off future. In fact, I'm going to try and time this out as best as I possibly can. But the winner at the end of this race is going to be Jamison Huffman. Miles Crabbe will be classed right beyond in P2. Justin Huffman going to complete a Huffman P1 and P3. Right at your podium, as I just said a couple of moments ago, in 3rd. Ryan Campbell will be classed in 4th. Michelle Lynn in 5th. Matt Thompson in 6th. Andrew Love in 7th. Jacob Schilling in P8. Corey Heffron in class in 9th. Jim Brewster going to round out your top 10. We'll look through the rest of the results without mentioning them by name. Some of the drivers a little bit farther towards the back got struck by some falling anvils and ended up multiple laps down. Started with Jason Grider, ends with Joseph Tarantino, who ended this race coming out of turn number 1 at the very start of this race. But Charles, we have got a race winner of Jamison Huffman waiting up there in the interview waiting area. I'll let you take dibs on have a chat with him before we move off into the SRFs.
Oh, sure. Let's do that. Let's bring Jamison in here. So, Jamison, congratulations. First, so congratulations on your podcast debut on the racing line. So I got to watch a little bit of that today. But a fantastic race. It very close there at the end. It was just a seesaw battle between you and Miles for the entire race.
Yeah, it was. I got a little bit bored in the middle of it when he was just kind of sitting behind me. I was like, man, this doesn't feel like a V race. There's no, 20-liter swaps a lap happening. So, but yeah, it was still a fun, tough race.
Yeah, it looked like we kind of had a little bit of a drama at the start of the race, and we kind of got broken up into some 2 and 3 car packs. But there were some good battles in amongst those packs, and once again, I think very smart move there at the end of the race to jump to the lead before you got to the chicane, and a good defensive line running back down to the start finish line.
Gotta tuck it all the way inside in those guys.
Well, there you go. So Spec Racers coming up next. How are you feeling about that?
Good if I can switch my brain from V's to Surf.
Yeah.
It may take a minute, but I can try.
Yeah. Cool. We'll let you go. We'll let you thank anybody you want to thank, and then we'll let you go and get ready for that next race.
Definitely thank my parents. Whole reason I'm here right now. I'd like to thank you guys and Stevie for putting on this league and broadcasting everything. and everybody who comes out and races. It's always fun, clean racing.
Absolutely, James. We'll see you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that right there was Jamison Hoffman, and also the cameo from Mr. Thompson. That slick son of a. We got the Spec Racer Fords coming up right now, Charles. That's gonna be a really good race to look forward to. Those Spec Racer Fords always put on a good show, and I have a feeling that at this draft-heavy racetrack and those draft-heavy cars, it's gonna be a good one. So we're going to re-rack it with a commercial break. I'm going to get the mental image of having a 32-year-old man who's part of the Air Force come into a commentary booth that I'm a part of, and meow. And we'll get ready for that Spec Racer Ford race that's coming up after these messages.
Through dip 50, slowing crest 40, 1 left. Caution to 2 right short to 5.
Introducing the Sim Motion Rally Sequential Shifter. Our shifter is specifically designed for sim racing enthusiasts who want to enhance their experience in the rally world using a push-pull system. Compatible with wheelbases like the Sim Magic Alpha series, V&M Direct Drive, Fanatic, and Simucube, it can easily be installed in minutes. It also has the adjustability to suit any wheel or driver's needs. It's also plug and play with titles like Dirt Rally, iRacing, and WRC. Available now at sim-motion.com. SimMotion has teamed up with iRacing and V&M Simulation with an extreme prize package for Season 4. To win, paint any car with a SimMotion logo, race in 10 official iRacing events, and you are entered to win an extreme direct drive and GT wheel bundle. But that's not all. Compete in the Formula 1600 Fixed Series, win your division, and you could score this set of pedals. Gear up and get racing. The rewards are waiting. With years of experience and a passion for customer service, SimMotion is a trusted name for SimMagic products. Whether you're just getting started or a seasoned pro, we have the gear to get you on the podium. At SimMotion, we don't just sell gear, we fuel your passion for sim racing.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with the Spec Racer Fords here from the Ray Esports Club Racing League. This is round number 5 for group number 3 at Road Atlanta. We're off the back of a really good Formula V race. I have a feeling this Spec Racer Ford race is going to be even more intense than the one that came before. It's myself, Ron Maunz, and Charles Bachel in the commentary booth. We also got Joshua Wilkie working all the cameras and the graphics in the virtual production hauler. But Charles, heading into this race, it's going to be a good one. I have some experience commentating some SRF action at this very racetrack. It's going to be a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about the Formula Vs, and you saw that race where they were able to draft on the front stretch and the back stretch and able to make moves, but these cars is a completely different story. These cars are draft monsters. They will bump draft just as well as any NASCAR will, and you'll be able to pass. You may be able to pick up a half a second on the cars in front just down that back straight. So this is going to be a very interesting, a quick race, but a very interesting strategic race on when to make those moves and when to kind of lay back and set yourself up for another corner. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And we got some heavy hitters running in this race as well. Looking through how things are slotted as it stands at the present moment, it's Nicholas Royce Pudo on the provisional pole as it stands currently, saying a 1-minute 31.991. That's a good lap time for the driver who already has a win thus far this season. That coming at Summit Point where he pulled off the double in the Formula Vs and the Spec Racer Fords from this series. He is joined provisionally on the front row by Jameson Huffman. So rather interesting that the one driver who's got a chance to pull off a sweep tonight is currently being slotted on the front row with the driver who already has thus far this season. Gonna do another on-board lap, this time in the Spec Racer Fords, and this time riding on board with the number 6 car of Aaron Bray. Heading down this start-finish straightaway into turn and I think he decided to bail out of it. So we'll pretend that didn't happen as we continue to follow this qualifying session. A couple of minutes left to go, and it should be noted as we are still in this qualifying session with some of these drivers setting the times on the board. You just saw some of their wonderful products a couple of moments ago, and it should be noted at this point in time that tonight's broadcast of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, exclusively here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, is brought to you by Sim Motion. Sim Motion is a store by sim racers for sim racers, carrying everything from bond boxes to steering wheels and the best brands from the sim racing world, including Sim Magic, Moza, Husingveld, and many, many more. With decades of experience in the industry, Sim Motion is a great choice for sim racers in both North America and Europe looking to upgrade their simulators. If you'd like to check out what Sim Motion has to offer, go to us.sim-motion.com. That is us.sim-motion.com. Sim Motion is not only the sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series on the iRacing platform, but is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, and feel free to use discount code RAY5 at checkout for some very sweet discounts. We got some very sweet racing to look forward to right now. Riding on board with Tom Wentz, bang into the wall of turn number 1, one of the most challenging corners around this racetrack, catching at the driver, the number 28.
Yeah, Tom went straight into the wall, and he's back out to the turn 1. Obviously, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and you heard Jameson Huffman mention it. These are completely different cars to the Formula V. Formula V, very light, very lightweight. All the mechanical grip you could ask for those little bitty tires they put on there, very pointy by all indications. The Spec Racer, on the other hand, with the big body, obviously we talked about the draft capability of it, but also very, very understeery and a little bit more difficult to drive. You got to kind of lean the bodies in and do a little more with it. Still a little more aero than the Vs, but still really relying on that mechanical grip.
As it stands presently, we're really looking forward to what this race has in store. It's going to be a good one for CERN, and I have a feeling that with all the racing action we have coming up, it's going to be a really good way to ring in the end of February here from the Ray Esports Club Racing League, the second to last month from this championship. So that's going to be rather odd to think about. This season started all the way back in late October, right before Halloween. It's run all the way through ever since the start of the season. A lot of stuff has gone down. I turned 20 midway through this season back in late December, and we've had a lot of drivers come in and out, and some drivers who have also been heavy hitters week in and week out. Should be noted here in group number 3, the fact that we have not had any repeat winners in both the Formula Vs and the Spec Racer Fords as it stands currently. Of course, that is subject to change, considering that Nicholas Rice-Puto, who already has a win at Summit Point, certainly showing a heck of a lot of pace here at Road Atlanta. And if we harken our minds back to one of the earlier Ray Esports Club races this season, Charles, Nicholas Rice-Puto was very fast in the GT4s when they made their appearance here for group number 2. So Rice-Puto may be in with a really good shot of doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's obviously on the top of the leaderboard as qualifying ends. So yeah, give him a better than average odds that he's going to do well.
Give him a good shot to try and do well in this race, and the Floridian driver who drives some Spec Racer Ford machinery in real life is probably going to seize at the opportunity. Let's take a look at the second starting grid of tonight's racing action, and it will be Nicholas Rice-Puto on that number 7 car grabbing the pole. Only 13 thousandths of a second between himself and Jamison Hoffman, set to join him on the front row. Miles Grab will start this race in 3rd next to Gianni Maioro in 4th. We have Scott Russell, the New Jersey driver, in the 22 car starting in 5th, next to Seth Spolman in 6th. Brad Cathcart, the driver from Australia, deciding that for breakfast he's going to be munching some curbs in these Spec Racer Fords. He'll be starting in 7th, next to Ryan Campbell in 8th. Matt Thompson will start this race in 9th, with Aaron Bray riding at your top 10.
Yep, Josh Justice starts in P11. Jim Brewster starts in P12. Edgar Santinelli in 13th. Chuck Labano in 14th. Joseph Tarantino in 15th. Corey Heffron in 16th. Christian Rice-Puto in 17th. Jason Grider 18th. Wayne Buttermore 19th. Mike Key in P20. Joaquin Effinger in P21. Ken Estep in 22nd. And Tom Wendt in 23rd. That is your 23-car grid for tonight's Spec Racer race at Road Atlanta.
It's going to be a good one. These cars synonymous with the SCCA, and as I mentioned earlier on in the broadcast, the SCCA runoffs were held at this track from 1970 when the track first opened all the way up until 1993. And I gotta say, from my personal point of view as well, there's a little bit of nostalgia, for lack of a better term, that I feel whenever I see the Spec Racer Fords running around this racetrack. Don't really talk about this too much, and this actually it's a little bit of a story relating to you as well, Charles. This dates all the way back to March of 2023. Did my first ever Weekend Warriors broadcast. It was round number 1 for season 2 of 2023 of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, which, by the way, you can catch every single Sunday here on SMB with Charles, I believe, joining me in the commentary booth this upcoming weekend, so that's going to be some fun stuff. But my first ever Weekend Warriors broadcast, and I think my 3rd or 4th broadcast ever, was of the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors at this very racetrack. It was myself and our SMB colleague, Mr. Tim Cox, on the call for that one. He did not know how to pronounce my last name. My computer nearly blew up trying to process about 56 cars out there on the track, and I was absolutely dumbfounded with the great racing action that was there. And I believe, Charles, I was replacing you for that broadcast as you were out that week. So a little bit of circularity as we see these Spec Racer Fords on this formation lap, set to grab the green flag in a couple of moments' time, nearly 2 years after that race.
Yeah, absolutely. I love these. This was the well, I think it was not the second series. I was going to say it was the second series, but it was one of the first series I actually got involved with, and just fell in love with these racers and the cars that they're racing. It just always makes for some fantastic racing, and I'm looking forward to getting this race going right now.
It is going to be a good one. These Spec Racer Fords put on a good show regardless of what kind of track they're running at, and here at this draft-heavy, iconic American road course, we're expecting the same. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. And yet again, it's Jamison Hoffman on that front row trying to grab the lead. Let's see if he'll be able to do it on Rice-Puto. The driver's fanning out already. Close quarter stuff. And look at that, 3 wide nearly. Heading off into turn number 1. Look at that, the number 3 car. Multiple cars sliding off the track. Heading through turn number 1. Big drop drama, big contact. That's Edgar Sentinelli getting a piece of that weight. Baltimore involved as well. That was a big slide heading all through the first corner for the driver of the number 3 car. That was Gianni Maioro, who's dropping down like a rock. Multiple cars getting involved in some drama. Jason Grider, Sentinelli, Baltimore, more drama being made. Heading through on the exit of turn at number 3. I can barely speak with all the drama we've had at the start of this race. Some things change and others stay the same.
Yeah, you just kind of see that as we on board there with Wayne Buttermore. He's got that's Effinger in front of him, just damaged, massive damage to several cars out there. And you could just kind of see it. There was 4 wide in the back, probably about 8 rows behind the lead. And it just that's never going to work. And it doesn't matter what car you're in.
Yeah, I think we may have to take a look at several replays because that didn't seem like one incident. That seemed like about 15 that were going on at the exact same time involving the same batch of about 10 cars. Here we go, side-by-side racing between the two at the front of the field. Nicholas Rice-Puto trying to regain his spot at the front of the field. Justin Huffman slipping down into second. I think Josh Justice and Scott Russell having a good battle going on as Scott Russell, I think, just spun the New Jersey driver having a bad run through turn at number 10. That's going to affect him badly as lawn mowing action from Nicholas Rice-Puto coming out of the final corner onto the start-finish straightaway. Sets a fast lap of the race, picked up about 2 pounds of grass as a result of the off-track excursion. And no, we're not talking about those aforementioned plane flights landing on the back straightaway here. Here we go, some side-by-side racing involving the number 13 of Ryan Campbell. Getting a moved on Tom Wendt, Matt Thompson. The other Frito Sport car looking to follow as Tom Wendt goes off the track a little bit on the exit of turn number 1 of Frito Sport. Battle heading off into turn number 3 does not materialize, but at the front of the field, it's still Nicholas Rice-Puto.
Yeah, so far, pretty straightforward at the front. Obviously, the guys that are in 4th, 5th, and 6th, that group, Justice, Cathcart, Spolman, and Russell, want these guys to be battling side by side. It's just going to make their opportunities to get pulled up back to the start as we're back on board here at the start of the race. And you can just see contact there, causes one spin. You're going to come back on the track. He does, but that's not what caused it. It looks like it was just checkups as we're going through turn 1 and just multiple spins in multiple places.
Yeah, I think really what kicked all of this off was Gianni Maioro having a bad run on the exit of turn number 1. All the cars having a check up led to them just spinning around like they're on an oil slick. That's the thing when it comes to these Spec Razor Fords. You want to have full commitment through some of these corners, because if you back off and try and drive around some of these corners at, let's just say, 66% of what you usually would be able to do, doesn't work out for you at all, as we see all that drama heading off through the corner. Wayne Baltimore, one of the last cars involved in that, really nowhere to go for the driver of the number 73 machine. Edgar Santinelli got a big piece of this drama as well. Let's ride on board with the number 57 Frito Sport car from Frito himself, and multiple spinners, and let's see, oh yeah, he got whacked, and that front clip of that Spec Racer Ford popping off and then reappearing. It popped off like a misshapen Lego, and then the iRacing guys were like, oh yeah, sorry, we took that a little bit early, as it nearly sound like a
there was, I think I think this is the catalyst of it. And you're right, it was Maioro just got out on those outside curbs and then spins again coming into turn 2 and 3, and middle of the track. That's not good, obviously. That's not where you want to stop your car. Obviously, not much he could do about it. Just got to get the car stopped, and nowhere for the rest of that group to go.
The square root of 0 things they could have done to avoid contact. That's so unfortunate, but hey, it's a world of racing. Stuff like that's going to happen from time to time. Gotta say, something that's happened has been the dropping of the anvil onto Jamison Hoffman. He's dropped down like a rock, currently class in 8th. Not sure what in the world happened to him, but things have gone to hell in a handbasket for him, as we see Miles Crabb dropping down to P2 with Nicholas Rice-Puto getting a move done on him, heading down into turn number 10. The close quarters racing still continuing all throughout this field, but at the front of the field, at the north end of it, Jameson Huffman has been taken out of that, and pretty significantly too. He's now 7.2 seconds back. Let's see what happened. Running wide, heading through the bottom end of the circuit, runs wide through 6, and spins through 7. He had to build up a big lead by that point. You could just barely see those 2 cars in the back a shot, but he spins at the bottom end of the circuit, and that's going to take him out of that battle.
Yeah, let's get another look at this as he's coming through 6. Just too much speed. That's really all it was. He just carried too much speed in the corner, lost the rear of the car, The mechanical grip just all went away. Then he's just at the tires hot at this point, and just makes it very difficult to recover. So we're back at the front now with Josh Justice running in second. He's managed to get up to this front group and jump ahead of Nicholas Rice-Puto. Oh, and he spins.
Oh, and that was Joshua Justice. I think he just augured straight into the inside barrier. It hasn't been a smooth race for him up to this point. Let's take a look at this close quarter stuff heading through the S's. Oh, boy, that could have ended in tears. That was, very slickly done on the number 7. But as slick as it was, he also had a slip and slide moment a couple of moments afterwards. Let's see, heading down into the bottom out of the circuit through 6 right about now. And hit the curb on the inside, maybe a little bit of contact, and he kept it out of the barrier. How the hell did he do that?
That was a great catch. He managed to keep it off the wall. Obviously lost some positions back down to P5, but had a great run going, and as long as he can just keep working, we see, he's struggling with the front end of this car. Is this a replay? Okay, it is a replay. Yeah, so just too much speed, and tried to correct it, had fought it, and did a great job of, like I said, keeping it off the barrier.
Well, clearly the oil change that was done to Joshua Justice's car ended up on the tires more than anything else. That is not the ideal line at all. That's certainly not the ideal line for Brad Cathcart in the 905 car, deciding to run on the club layout of Road Atlanta. That configuration, mainly the added-on chicane on the exit of turn number 10. Oh. Anyways, Jameson Hoffman running in 6th as it stands at the present moment. Right behind him is Christian Rice-Puto, the younger brother, I believe, of Nicholas. So as we saw the father-son duo of Jameson Hoffman and his father Justin in the Formula Vs, we got the brotherly duo of the 2 Rice-Putos running in this race with the Surfs.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're on board here with Ken Estep, just wide, you know what? It almost looked like he just went straight, like maybe that was a hardware failure. It just didn't look quite right about that incident there. Like maybe he just could not recover that car. Not that he wasn't trying to, just for whatever reason couldn't get it to turn.
Yeah, potentially. Maybe he's just used to having Formula 1 car levels of downforce and said, hey, I could try and go through turn number 1 of Road Atlanta flat out, which even in an F1 car on iRacing, that is sketchy, as we nearly just saw side by side with Seth Spolman and Scott Russell. Spolman looking for this race to go a little bit better than that first race in the Formula Vs. That one ended in tears as heading down into turn number 10, hit the wall and became the 4th flipper in the span of about 10 minutes in that first race of the evening. So looking to have a better turn of fortune. As you can see, Scott Russell, I will always mention this in reference to Scott Russell and Joseph Tarantino's cars. Scott Russell running the New Jersey Turnpike livery on that number 22 car. And clearly giving these drivers a headache, much like the New Jersey Turnpike does to drivers many times all throughout the year, to millions every single calendar year. Is spinning coming out turn number 7.
Is that Christian Rice-Puto? Yeah, it is, and he gets the car looped back around. Be very careful to get started here. Make sure it doesn't spin it again. And I was just, as we're talking about liveries, I was looking at Seth Spolman. Normally runs the Hitchhiker's Guide livery, but this time has decided to go with Bruce Willis and Die Hard. So a little bit of a little change for Seth, as he's got Bruce Willis in the aired vent. And of course Tom went with the classic Texaco Haviland Ford Thunderbird tribute livery for Davey Allison, the number 28, which obviously being from Alabama, that's a big deal.
And I will note one thing in reference to Seth Spolman. I believe that is a holdover from the Week 13 runoffs for the Weekend Warriors all the way back in December when they were running Christmas liveries. I think that's still a holdover from that, unless I am very much mistaken, which quite fitting that we are coming to the end.
So,
it's
makes sense.
I remember our esteemed colleague, our esteemed meowing colleague, Mr. Adam Thompson, was rather enamored with that livery when we were doing that Spec Racer Ford race for that broadcast those couple of months ago. And in a couple of weeks, we will be presenting the next running of the Ray Esports Weekend Warriors Week 13 runoffs. We have no idea what the format's going to be. The drivers don't, none of us really do. No clue at all. So that is going to be a true curveball for those drivers in a couple of weeks' time. But here we go. 3 wide action. Hang down the back straightaway as you do in a Spec Racer 4. Jameson Upman trying to get that moved on Justice as Justice tries to get moved on Spolman. The swap-a-roo between those 3 heading down that back straightaway did not look like any sort of major drama, just some textbook stuff, using that run coming out of turn number 7 and saving up the momentum for the end of the straight.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just a classic move on with these draft cars is just get your run and get out in front. And so now it's going to be up to Jameson to be the Pied Piper, as it were, and see if he can carry these cars back up and close the gap up on the two leaders of Crab and Rice Buddha.
And as this race continues to develop, we are past the 3rd mark of this race. 11.5 minutes on the board of this 30-minute long race. Christian Rice Puda just ran into some more difficulties. He's had to tow back to the pits, currently classed down in 19th. Not ideal for him, as his brother still runs in P2. Side-by-side racing involving Seth Spolman and Scott Russell, heading down into turn number 6. Spolman dropping down to P6 as a result of that move into turn number 6. That 22 car, every single time I see that New Jersey Turnpike sign on that car, I still get those bad flashbacks. So let's jump to the front of the field and follow Miles Crab and Nicholas Rice Pudo. They're bump drafting, heading down that back straightaway, trying to build a cushion to themselves and Jameson Huffman, which they have certainly been able to do. 6 seconds between themselves and the 3rd place runner of Huffman, basically in a league and a zip code of their own.
Yeah, and that's a smart strategy. You want to try and build that gap, because the instant you decide, okay, it's time to race, you're going to lose tenths at a time in corners where you're fighting. So it's good to go ahead and get that buffer built, because as soon as you start fighting with those with that car that you're battling with, you're going to start losing time hand over fist. So that's a very smart idea by Rice Pudo.
Yeah, very good call for him to try and use that strategy as it stands currently. You don't want to push hard as it stands at the present moment. Big deal, you lead at the halfway mark. What about leading on the final lap? That's probably a bit more important. That's when the pay windows opens up and you probably want to push around then instead of midway through. Albeit, again, very good reason why I'm behind a microphone instead behind the wheel. Maybe my mindset's just a little bit different. Following Aaron Bray, running in 8th at the moment in the number 6 car, has a good fight, maybe developing with himself and Brad Cathcart, the Aussie in the 905. I think we've gotten the times just about right. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning for Brad Cathcart as it stands currently. So not sure what would possess him to decide that, let's get the day kicked off with some Spec Racer Ford action and some Spec Racer Ford racing related stress. But Brad Cathcart, he's done a lot throughout this Ray Esports season. Always good to see him out on the track. Probably not as insane as Antonio Reis, who's run from time to time in this Ray Esports Club Series, a driver from Portugal, racing at what would probably be 2 a.m. for him or something like that. Absolute madness for some of these drivers. I feel I do not envy their sleep schedule.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Brad just gets up, has his bowl of Weetabix, and says, "Let's do some racing today," and jumps into the session and just has a good time and runs. He usually runs really well. So it's always good to have Brad in these events, and I can't. And Antonio, that's a madman racing at 2 or 3 a.m. In these races. So obviously a man that has a different sleep schedule from most human beings.
Genuinely, I feel so bad in a situation like that. And I gotta say, that extends far beyond racers. There's been some broadcasts that I've done at around about this time slot on the East Coast of the U.S. So as it stands currently, we are a couple of minutes removed from it being 10 p.m. here in the city of Philadelphia. I've done some broadcasts this late with some people in the UK who've been doing it at 2 o'clock in the morning. At that point, it's bad enough for me doing the broadcast when I'm doing it in the very late evening, where I'm I don't want to screech like an irate cat like I usually do on the air. Not only because I don't want to blow my vocal cords out, I don't want to wake up the neighbors. I can't even imagine doing a broadcast at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I did, I can promise you my head would get smashed with a baseball bat by both my best friend Kate and my father in the house. That would go down about as horribly as things possibly could if I decided to do a broadcast around that time. But as we take a look, we've got some packs forming throughout this field. We've got the two at the front of Rice, Pudo, and Crab. We got the two that we saw a couple of moments ago as Huffman and Justice, Scott Russell and Seth Spolman involved in their own battle. Brad Cathcart and Aaron Bray involved in their own battle as well. We also got a pack forming involving Chuck Labano and Edgar Sancinelli. Not sure how this battle is going to go, considering you got the Frito Sport driver of Chuck Labano bump drafting his teammate heading down the back straight. Not just his teammate, his team owner as well. It's bad enough to crash into a teammate and have the prospect of crashing into your teammates. Crashing into your team owner. Talk about me doing a broadcast at 2 o'clock in the morning going down bad. That would go down even worse.
It really would. I did notice that Tom Went has towed back to the pits. So he obviously had an issue somewhere on the track. And looks like he's already disconnected from the race, so he's done for the night. Time to go to bed, I guess. But yeah, so I kind of was watching that the first two packs, and Rice Pudo went to the lead, but when he did, they actually lost about 3 or 4 tenths of a second to that second group. So they have to be very careful when they're doing that. So Crab's going to have to make a decision: do I want to get past this guy and stay out front, or do I want to just kind of ride around for another, 10 minutes or so? But you're going to have to be very careful because once again, once you start battling side by side, that time gap drops very, very quickly.
Yeah, you can't even say these drivers in terms of pace drop down like an anvil thrown out of a helicopter. It's like dragging an anchor through asphalt as a result of these drivers going side by side, which we may end up seeing in a couple of moments' time. It was certainly close with Nicholas Rice Pudo and Miles Crab coming out of turn number 1. They did not go side by side into 2 and 3, which I think is a smart call, but Rice Pudo still leading this race over Miles Crab. Jameson Huffman has made his way up into the final podium spot of 3rd, so that's a pretty good recovery drive from the driver, the number 89 car. There you see him heading his way out of turn number 5 right now, and I was getting worried that I was just about to jinx him as he ran a little bit wide and got a bit too flirtatious with that outside tire barrier. Turn 5 again, one of the most challenging bends around this track. Haven't seen a driver go off through there yet. I think I just jinxed it though.
Yeah, it's very possible. That's one, like, as we said in the Formula V race, very, very difficult corner. Doesn't matter what car you're in, it's just difficult. I think we'll say, I'll give a shout out to Josh Justice. He's done a really good job of just hanging on the back of Huffman and following him, using that draft to let him allow him to pull him along. Probably run a little bit quicker because of that, as they're coming up on some lap traffic. Did not catch that car. Guess maybe Wayne Buttermore, potentially. I'm not sure, but I'm sure we'll identify them at some point. They're off, wisely pulls off to the right hand side of the track to allow these cars through.
That, I believe, was Jason Grider, that lapped car involved in all of that. He's currently the only driver 1 lap down who's still out there on the racetrack. Has seen a pretty high attrition rate thus far in this Spec Racer Ford race with only 19 minutes on the clock. Has seen Joseph Tarantino, Tom Wendt, Christian Rice Pudo, Corey Heffron, Joaquin Effinger, Ken Estep, and Gianna Maioro all retire from this race in the 13 laps that we've had on the board thus far. I think we've gotten to the point, though, where this field has settled firmly into a groove, and they've gotten to the point where they're probably going to take it a bit easy. I know that saying take it a bit easy in reference to some of these drivers in this series usually ages about as well as milk in the Nevada sun. However, I think these drivers are maybe deciding, hey, there's no point battling for a spot with 10 minutes left on the clock. Let's just try and figure out what each other's strengths and weaknesses are around this track, and then try and pounce when that pay window opens up on the last lap.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the calm before the storm, as we see Brewster and Campbell. I think they were battling pretty much during were they battling the first race, or was that might have been Thompson that was battling with Brewster during the first race, but you can see the bump drafting both those cars with front end damage, so it probably makes sense for them to just bump as hard as they can go, because that's going to make them, you know, kind of take away that deficiency of the aero damage, and allow them to make a little bit better pace working together.
And just try and be a little bit quicker. Those small little gains that you can make around a racetrack like this can make one big difference come time for the end of these 30-minute long races. Speaking of, we've got 20.5 minutes now on the clock, so we're definitely getting to crunch time as it stands at the present moment. Doing the quick math in my head, which in fairness, it's math from me, so it's probably horribly inaccurate. Probably about 6 laps left to go. I think we'll be ticking around lap 20 come time for the end of this race, as side-by-side racing going to heat up with Chuck Labano and Edgar Sancinelli heading down the hill off into turn number 12 right now. Onto that start-finish straightaway. Let's see Labano and Sancinelli give each other the bump and the nudge. That's sketchy to do to the back of your team owner's car, but clearly Chuck Labano has a bit more stones than I do.
Yeah, you just want to make sure you get those cars lined up. Let them settle out of the corner before you start doing any kind of major bumping. That one was a little bit off, but, you know, Sancinelli handled it well, kept the car pointed in the right direction. And once again, these cars working together just is helpful. It just helps them make a little more pace as we see the bump draft working their way around Cathcart between Thompson and Bray, I believe. Yep, indeed. And so they got their way around Cathcart. Cathcart drops down to 9th, but he's right on their tail. So you might see this 3-car group working together through these straightaways as best they can.
Yeah, we nearly just saw some 3-wide action hang down that start-finish straightaway. I was about to get really nervous. I wouldn't say the edge of my seat because I'm standing up at the present moment, which, by the way, to our producer, Mr. Wilkie, if my audio sounds a little bit different, that is why. Don't worry, my microphone didn't blow up yet. Oh, as that's a car going off the track, that I think may have been Glider coming out of turn number 3 into 4. Just saw a little bit of a, I believe it was a front clip of a Spec Racer Ford bouncing down the track. Janzar, by this point in time, has already been picked up by one of the track marshals around this track and already listed for sale on eBay, just marked as slightly used. Let's take a look at in the 112 car. Runs wide, hang through turn number 1, which is bad enough as is. They still has a front bumper on that car. Let's see, heading through the grass, doing a little bit of lawn mowing. The Spec Racer Ford can work like that from time to time.
Ooh.
Spins coming out of the corner with the grass still on his tires, and then augers straight into that tire barrier. Of course, the tire barriers here in the same made out of the matter of White Dwarf stars, so no give at all when he hit it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a combination of just the, you know, the grass and the dirt on the tires, and I think maybe he might have caught the curb wrong. Going through 2 and 3 as not quite on the proper line, and yeah, just sent the car around into the wall. And as we see Aaron Bray checked up, not sure what was going on there, but definitely just, I don't know, maybe couldn't really tell if he got the car out of shape or not coming over the crest of the hill, but definitely had to let off, as we're going to get a replay here as we're on board now with Aaron Bray. Oh yeah, just kind of felt that car. He kind of felt that car get real light, and the rear end wanted to come around. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to just let up. We'll let these guys go by, and I'll continue on my way once I get everything repositioned properly."
Yeah, trying to get his bearing straight as a result of that moment, heading out of turn number 11 down the hill. But back at the front of the field, Miles Crabb holding on to the race lead. Nicholas Rice-Puto slotted in P2. These two have been the Pied Pipers of this race up to this point. We'll note the gap between themselves and James Duffman has gone down a little bit. I'll eventually get those two names sussed out, but that gap has decreased a little bit, but certainly not enough whereby these drivers are feeling a lot of pressure. They still got 5 seconds in the back of him, so really no harm, no foul done in all of that. Seth Spolman currently involved in a battle with himself and Scott Russell. That's for P5 as it stands currently. Those two cars covered by just about nothing, but at the front of the field, I gotta wonder, as it stands at the moment, Charles, you've interviewed Miles Crabb a lot throughout this season. The driver of the 131 car, very fast. He is a quick driver. There is no question or shadow of a doubt. I mean, he proved that in the Formula V race earlier on. But he has not been able to get the wins. He has been so dominant in these races, but he did not lead the lap that mattered. At the end of the day, he has been the bridesmaid a lot throughout this Ray Esports Club Racing League season. So I wonder if he's going to be able to hold off the challenge from Nicholas Rice-Puto. Will Miles Crab and his will to win prevail, or is Nicholas Rice-Puto going to throw him a curveball?
It's a good question. We'll know in about 4 minutes or so. But yeah, he's been very, very close, multiple occasions. I'm sure he's trying to think of trying to get the strategy working as Rice-Puto now giving the bump draft down the back stretch, trying to stretch that gap out as it's closed up a little bit. Back to Huffman down to 5.4 seconds. So Huffman is driving like a madman, trying to make up that time. So I know Miles well enough to know from watching him race here, he's going to race clean, and he's going to try and find a good a way to win the race cleanly without having any incidents. So I'm sure he's thinking, all right, do I want to be in first or second? And if I'm in second, where do I make my move and try and make it stick to the end?
As we see some near side-by-side action involving Matt Thompson running in P7 and Brad Cathcart running in P8. That was heading down into turn number 10, but those drivers did not decide to go for that battling. But getting back to the point that we were racing, talking about that battle up towards the front, only time will tell. And when it comes to the time that is set to be told, not a lot of time left to go in this race. Coming up to just 3 minutes left. I believe they're not coming to the white flag this time by, but will be coming to 2 to go. Still, we're getting to crunch time in this race, and with 2 to go around a racetrack like this, there's not a lot of overtaking opportunities that come as a result of all of that. Actually, yeah, it will be 2 to go. My math skills and lack thereof decide to bite me at the worst possible time. And I was like, will they actually be picking the white flag this time by? No, they will not, unless these Spec Racer Ford cars happen to be powered by milk and they're going about 10 miles an hour down the back straightaway. Not going to have to worry about the white flag being up in the air this time by. It's going to be 2 to go for your leader as it stands currently of Miles Crab. Nicholas Rice-Puto, though, already has a win thus far this season. That coming at Summit Point about 2 months ago. He kicked off 2025 here from the Ray Esports Club Racing League Series the best way that he possibly could. And let's see if he can continue on that form to bring the month of February to the same conclusion that he kicked off the month of January with.
Yeah, we'll see. And we see Huffman's kind of stretched that gap over Justice now. He's really just turned it up a notch. And Rice-Puto kind of stuck his nose out on the back stretch last time by just to see what kind of run he was going to have. Just doing, everybody doing their little strategy, games, doing some testing here and there during the course of the race to figure out where the move is going to have to be made. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of defensive moves made in reaction to, or probably before. You may see Crab as he comes down, running the inside line, just trying to make Rice-Puto go the long way around. But we will be coming down the straightaway here into the turn 10 chicane, and then we'll be taking white flag as we get back to the start-finish line.
Yeah, only one more lap of racing action left to go for these two. One of them is going to be victorious. The other is probably going to be a little bit disappointed. But I gotta say, I feel like of these two, Nicholas Rice-Puto is probably going to be the one that's a bit less disappointed at the end of this race if he does end up finishing second. Miles Crab, as we've said throughout this broadcast, he's been quick. He's found himself in these spots, but he's always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. And part of the reason why that is the case is because his competitors have been in the good spots. And if these two remain in the same order that they are right now, come time for them reaching the bottom end of the circuit for the last time in this race here at Road Atlanta with the white flag being out, I think it's going to be Nicholas Rice-Puto grabbing the win. If he has that draft advantage heading down that back straightaway, he's going to blow Miles Crab's metaphorical doors off. But hey, we haven't hit there yet. We're heading through the S's for the final time, though. And this is the shot, riding on board with Nicholas Rice-Puto, just trying to keep tabs with him. He doesn't need to swing for the fences, just applying a little bit of pressure to the back of Miles Crab's race car and just seeing how things are going to shake out. He doesn't need to swing for the fences. He just needs to keep within striking distance of that 131 car, which he has been able to do flawlessly throughout the first half of this final lap. There you can see the gap heading onto the back straightaway for the last time in this race. Rice Pudo closing. That gap is diminishing, and as he goes to the gears and the speed creeps up ever higher, you can see Miles Crab already starting to weave, trying to break that draft, but it's not enough. Look at that Rice Pudo trying to get that move done down the inside into turn number 1. They're side by side into the chicane for the last time in this race, and Rice Pudo going to get that move done, but still not over yet. Miles Crab tried to fight back on the outside line heading into turn number 10, but was not close enough through the braking zone. Coming out of the final corner for the final time in this race, under the bridge and down the hill, it's going to be the second win of the season for Nicholas Rice Pudo in the number 7 car. He wins it here at Road Atlanta. Miles Crab going to finish in second yet again, as we have a battle going on involving Scott Russell and Seth Spolman. Russell just got abducted by a UFO there multiple times. Not sure what's going on to the driver of the number 22 car. Clearly, his airnet stopping working as much as the cars stop on the New Jersey Turnpike. He ends up in P5 on the road, blinking and out of existence, as side by side right line with Matt Thompson and Brad Cathcart. Thompson going to take 7th at the end of this race. Cathcart placed right behind in 8th. Here we go, another side-by-side fight, maybe developing, involving Jim Brewster in the 933 car and Ryan Campbell in the 13. That is not going to be a side-by-side fight to the line. However, they were still nose to tail. Oh, here we go. This is a good battle to talk about. Chuck Labano, Edgar Sancinelli, Mike Key, all these drivers packed in together like sardines and coming to blows, heading through the chicane. Look at that. That's spinning around as Chuck Labano. Sancinelli gonna blow their doors off as Mike Key gets a bit of that Labano drama as well. Sancinelli gonna find himself finishing this race in 12th when everything is said and done. Key placed right behind in lucky number P13, and Labano gonna get classed in 14th at the end of this race, right in front of Wayne Baltimore. That was close with Labano and Baltimore right at the line. But all the cars have taken the checkered flag. I think we'll be able to move off into the results in a few moments' time of a real exciting race and a real exciting night of racing action as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the 3-car battle with the Frito Sport teams. Just battling for that final position there, and Sancinelli takes that position, P12, with Key and Labano right behind him. So great battle between the teammates. They said, you know what, let's do some racing here at the end of the race, and very well done as we see Buttermore working his way around on his in lap. Fantastic battle for the race. Obviously, lots of drama in the end. You got to see the draft doing its damage. Unfortunately for Miles Crab, not much to do in the way of defense. You're just kind of, if you're leading there, you're probably going to be second at the end of the race. And that's the way it ended up, unfortunately, for Miles. Still had a good run. Gets a P2 on both races tonight, with Jamison Huffman getting the win in the Formula Vs and Nicholas Rice Pudo getting the win in the Spec Racers.
And so that is the 2 races from this evening done and dusted. And let's take a look at the results from the Spec Racer Ford race. It's going to be Nicholas Rice Pudo, the driver of the number 7 car, grabbing his 2nd Spec Racer Ford win this season in the Ray Esports Club Racing League, and his 3rd this group season as well. Rice Pudo, your winner in the Spec Racer Fords. Miles Crab finishing P2 yet again. Jameson Huffman going to round out your podium in 3rd. We have Joshua Justice being classed in 4th. Scott Russell classed right behind in 5th. Seth Spolman will be classed in 6th at the end of this race. Matt Thompson going to finish right behind on P7. Brad Cathcart finishes right behind Thompson in 8th. Aaron Bray will be classed in 9th at the end of this race, with Jim Brewster rounding out your top 10.
Yep, Ryan Campbell finishes in 11th, and Edgar Sancinelli is 12th, Mike Key 13th, Chuck Labano 14th, Wayne Buttermore 15th in your final car on the lead lap, Jason Grider finishing 16th, Tom Wentz 17th, Christian Rice Pudo Joseph Tarantino in 18th, Christian Rice Pudo 19th, Corey Heffron in 20th, Joaquin Effinger in 21st, Ken Estep in 22nd, and Gianni Mioro with the early drama finishes 23rd tonight.
So those are going to be your results at the end of this Spec Racer Ford race, and at the end of this race meeting for round number 5 for group number 3 of the Ray Esports Club Racing League here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. At the end of the day, your winners are going to be Jamison Huffman and Nicholas Rice-Puto. We had a chat with Huffman earlier on, and Charles, I will let you do the dibs and take Nicholas Rice-Puto, our winner at the end of the Spec Racer Ford race.
Well, let's bring Nicholas in here and we'll have a chat. Nicholas, congratulations on the win tonight, second win of the season. So obviously very draft happy race. So talk about it from your aspect. It was a good battle between you, Huffman, and then Miles Crab, especially at the end.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I thought I was gonna be able to break Miles, but he stayed with me the whole time, and I thought he was gonna do what I did at the end. I thought he was just gonna sit behind me the whole race and then pass me on the last, 10A and 10B. But he ended up going by, and then I timed my run down the back straight and was able to get the win.
Yeah, so we talked about that. Lots of, you could kind of see people trying different things, obviously, just trying to not necessarily break the draft, but you could kind of see people working strategies out early in the race. And, I kind of said it at the end of the broadcast or end of the race that, P1's probably not the preferential position coming into that last lap.
No, I thought I was in trouble if Miles was going to sit behind me. Yeah, and then coming to the back, the straight, the turn onto the back straight, I had to make sure I set myself up for a good enough run where I'm just not alongside, where I'm fully clear when I fully cleared him. So it worked out.
Well, we'll let you give any thanks or shout outs, and then we'll let you go have the great rest of your night.
Well, thank you guys for a great broadcast. Can't wait to watch it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nicholas. Nicholas Rice-Puto, race winner in the Spec Racers tonight.
And there was your winner, Rice-Puto, joining us in the commentary booth. And now I feel like I'm going to be treading on eggshells a little bit with this interview. Going to bring in Miles Crab into the booth. Now, Miles, I'm going to buck the trend of how I usually open up these interviews and ask you what your preferred liquor is, because that's another unfortunate loss for you, man. I've been pulling for you all season long, but I feel like the racing gods just have not smiled upon you fondly.
Maker's Mark or Captain Morgan Black Spice Rum. Yeah, I am unbelievably tired of finishing second. Both of those races, I ended up in the lead because I got bored. I was pushing hard to keep up with Nick and Jamison in the V, but I was making little mistakes because I was focusing on their tail light and bumper. So I just decided I wanted to hit my marks. And also, frankly, I thought I was slow enough that Jamison would catch up to us in a couple laps, but I found speed in the last couple laps for some reason. Yeah, no, that was just the exact same thing twice. Only difference is in the V, I had a run on Jamison and he covered off the inside, and I tried to go around the outside, and I just went out too late, and we got a 4X coming to the line because I touched his wheel. And then this one, I thought Nick was going to overslow it, and I was going to, the first plan was let him catch me, let him pass him, let me try to dive it up the inside in the 10A. And he almost let me do it, and then at the last second hit the brakes as I started to turn left to get cut under him. So I had to hit the brakes, and I lost the rear a little bit. And then I really thought he overslowed it, and I could downshift to second and get a launch and get back to the inside. And when I got the throttle, it just lit the rear tires up because I'd probably smoked him all the way into 10A, trying not to hit his rear bumper. And just didn't have anything for him. So that Jamison has every right. They both have every right to win these races. Nick could do by himself what I was doing in his draft. And same with Jamison in the V. I made a setup change in the V before the race started because I thought a little bit more toe out in the front would be good, and it was not. And Jamison, if he could have gotten a second lead, would have walked away from me. So props to both of them. They were both the class of the field in the given cars. Had a little bit more of a fighting chance in the SRF, but I underestimate how good Jameson and Nick were. Like, they just didn't overslow 10A on the last lap.
I'll tell you what, Miles, I may end up getting in contact with you after this broadcast so you can get in touch with the guy who usually supplies my commentator-issued falling anvils. So but I'll leave that at that and ask you about your thoughts heading into the next race here for group number 3, the second to last race at VIR. That's going to be a good one.
I put Road Atlanta and VIR in the same bucket. Mostly really long back straight and then twiddly bits in between. There is no turn 1 at Road Atlanta at VIR. There's no, like, you know, can I do this with less brake? Let's send it and use the hill to turn the car. There's nothing like that at VIR, but there's a lot more technical stuff. Hog pin's really difficult in these cars. I don't know in the V. I've never driven it in the V. It's probably flat in the V because everything is flat. But in the Spec Racer, all the downhill stuff is super technical, and I think it's called West Bend. I'll call it the left at the top of the hill because it's the fast left at the top of the hill. That's lap 1, lap 2, and Spec Racer in that corner will be sketchy. But no, Road Atlanta's fighting for my favorite track. VIR is also up there with Road America, so I'm quite happy to be going to tracks. I wish I had a lot more horsepower so I could just pull away, but you know, drafting's the name of the game.
I gotta say, those Formula Vs develop about as much horsepower as a Bluetooth Logitech mouse. And I will, but I mean, those Formula Vs put on some very good races, but man, they have as much power as a water pump from time to time. But Miles, we'll let you go and get in some seat time for that VIR race. After one last question, is there anyone you would want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Normal operating procedure. Hi, Mom. Hi, Jessica. Hi, anybody else who's listening. Thank y'all for broadcasting. Thank you, Stevie, for putting it on. And I just blanked on the sponsor. It's Sim something. Sorry, I've been driving. Brain doesn't work. Sim Motion. Thank you. Yeah, thank y'all for broadcasting.
Don't worry, man, Miles. A couple of weeks ago, I mixed up Sim Motion as the sponsor for the series and Slow Motion Broadcasting. So believe me, you're not alone in that regard. I
was wanting to say Sim Slow, and I was like, no, that's not right. That's but wait, what's the second word? Yeah, no.
I mean, in fairness to you, Miles, Sim Slow is usually how I describe my own sim racing adventures, and I'm going to leave it at that. But Miles, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the duo of silver. Hopefully, you'll be able to get the gold before the end of this year.
I'm gonna punt somebody for it. This is like 5 second places in a row.
I think there's one NASCAR interview many moons ago where a driver said that they would punt their grandma out of the way for a win. So I think may have had our own moment there with you, Miles, a couple of moments ago. But always good to have a chat with you. I hope to see you back out on track for the rest of the season.
Anytime I don't have a race conflict, I'll be there. So see y'all.
And that was your P2 finisher in both of these races, Miles Crabb. I think that's just about all the time we've got for in terms of interviews. But Charles, VIR in 1 month's time when the series re-racks it for the second to last broadcast of this season on March the 19th. These Group 3 races always fun, and VIR always pretty fun as well.
Yeah, I think Miles has got a good point about the long back stretch and the ability to draft and make up time, but VIR is just it's a different animal. You know, we're talking about an extra mile and a half of track compared to Road Atlanta, and a lot more technical stuff that you're going to have to get right. So, you know, for a driver like Miles, that might be the key to him. Is going to, obviously, Nicholas and Jameson are going to be tough to beat anytime they get in the car. But you know, you put in the work, and you never can tell. You know, somebody makes the smallest of mistakes, and the next thing you know, you've got a 2-second gap, and you're cruising to a victory. So yeah, would love to see Miles get a race win before the end of this season, and he's got a few more chances left.
Yeah, still a couple more opportunities. Got 2 races left to go for all of the Ray Esports Club Racing League season. But hey, between then and now for Group 3, we've got lots of action coming up. In fact, let's go through the stuff that we have on SMB every single week. On Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we got the action for the American Muscle Series. You can catch those old Mustangs campaigning around some of iRacing's coolest racetracks every single Tuesday night. And then 24 hours after that, we have got Wild Card Wednesdays here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, the Ray Esports Club Racing League Series that you just saw here tonight, shadowed and flanked by the Sim Racers Group Intermediate F4 Championship. You can catch the Ray Esports broadcast at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the SRG broadcast at 9:45. But the action does not stop there. In fact, it is far from done. Come time for the weekends, we got the action from all 3 of the Weekend Warrior Series. The Formula Vs that you can catch on Saturdays at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the awesome Formula V action, then the Formula Fords the day after that at 12:45, and the Spec Racer Fords at 2:45. All of that racing action. It doesn't stop on Sundays, though, as later on those evenings, you got the action from the XSLR Series on Sundays at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe the series is taking a 1-week hiatus this weekend. However, we have got you covered in terms of the racing action from the XSLR Series from now all the way through well into the summer. But as for this broadcast tonight of the Ray Esports Club Racing League, round number 5 for group number 3, I think that will just about do it. And so for myself, Ron Maunz, Charles Bachel joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a wonderful job working all the cameras and the graphics in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching this broadcast tonight here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.